The people who were closest to Elvis Presley believed that things would have turned out differently for the king if he had married Ann-Margret. Why do you think this was so? Join us in this video to find out and learn more about the relationship between the king and his so-called female counterpart. Elvis Presley's life was forever altered in 1963 when he was working on the set of his film Viva Las Vegas and had his first encounter with Ann-Margret. Although he had worked with a number of actresses in the past, Ann-Margret was the only one who could compare to her. The Swedish-American diva was praised as the female Elvis, owing to the fact that she was talented in the areas of singing, dancing, and acting. And soon long, Elvis and Ann-Margret developed their relationship into something more than that of friends or simple co-workers. They eventually fell in love with one another, but they had to keep their relationship a secret for little more than a year. When Ann-Margret was just 5 years old, her family relocated from Sweden to Wilmette, Illinois. Ann-Margret Olsen was a name that people started taking seriously, when she won a streak of talent competitions while she was a teenager, and this opened the door for her to pursue a career in music and dance. It didn't take long for her to cross paths with another star, who would go on to become the uncontested king of rock and roll. So, who was the lady that won Elvis Presley's heart and who, in the opinion of a lot of his followers, was the one who got away since he was already engaged to Priscilla? Here is everything you need to know about the 60s beauty. Ann-Margret was born in 1941, and her big break came when actor and comedian George Burns heard her sing at a hotel and gave her a 10-night performance gig at the Sahara Hotel in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. She was only 18 at the time. After that, the combination of her powerful vocals, dance moves, and looks made her transition to a Hollywood enthrall with the booming musical genre, both quick and natural. In fact, her debut role alongside Bette Davis in 1961's Pocketful of Miracles earned her the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year actress. After starring in the musicals State Fair in 1962 and Bye Bye Birdie in 1963, opposite era heartthrobs Pat Boone and Dick Van Dyke, she was ready for the most sought-after part in Hollywood, which was the love interest of the king. Without a doubt, she had already achieved fame. But the Elvis Presley era changed her forever. The meeting between the two took place in the summer of 1963. An Elvis biography states that the artist and his management had discussed the possibility of having a leading lady for the first time when they were working on Viva Las Vegas. Ann-Margret was a star in her own right, as well as a favorite in Hollywood, making her a perfect candidate for the role. The PR staff organized a meeting between the two people as a photo op for the media in an effort to get as much exposure as possible out of the match. According to Ann-Margret's account in her memoir titled Ann-Margret, "My story," she wrote, "Under the watchful gaze of director George Sidney, a studio photographer snapped photos of what the film company executives figured would be a historic moment. After some time had passed, they got together to record duets for the movie's soundtrack, and it was at this time that the romance between them began to develop. It would appear that the link was so immediate that some observed that Ann-Margret was the female version of Elvis Presley. It is said that the closeness lasted for a long time after production for Viva Las Vegas, which is considered by many people to be Presley's finest movie to this day. Soon enough, rumors began to spread that the two were involved in a romantic relationship with each other. They were frequently spotted out and about together, by themselves. She mentioned that they were going to take a drive up to a hill where they could converse while looking down on the city. According to Verve Times, Ann-Margret was spending nights in Presley's hotel suite, although Ann-Margret described their connection as a secret one. After returning to Memphis, Priscilla was given the assurance that each and every photo of Elvis and Ann-Margret was a part of a promotional gimmick for the movie. In spite of this, Priscilla is claimed to have maintained that Ann-Margret was the one whom she dreaded the most in the days leading up to her wedding. In spite of the fact that filming for Viva Las Vegas had come to an end, the pair continued to see one another. When Ann-Margret attended the film's premiere in London and was questioned about her friendship with Elvis Presley, however, things started to go downhill from there. Press stories at the time insinuated that she and Elvis Presley were even engaged, despite the fact that she did all in her power to avoid any mention about the romance. She attempted to clarify that she had been misquoted, but by that time, problems had already been made between Elvis and Priscilla as a result of the press. According to the things, Priscilla's parents brought up the fact to Elvis that he had made a vow to marry Priscilla, and he needed to keep his word and really get married. Unfortunately, even the best things eventually end. After Priscilla Beaulieu, now Priscilla Presley, learned of Elvis's love involvement with Ann-Margret, she forced him to end their relationship. Elvis married Priscilla in the years that followed, while Ann-Margret wed Roger Smith, a Hollywood producer. The tragic tale of the doomed couple continued, though. On May 1, 1967, Elvis wed Priscilla. Ann-Margret and Roger were wed on May 8th, exactly 1 week later. However, he returned to Sin City a month later in June 1967 to catch Ann-Margret's residency act. Elvis's trusted friend and confidant, Billy Smith, subsequently reported that the encounter had a lot of raw feelings on both sides. Quoted in Elvis and the Memphis Mafia by Alana Nash, he said, "I'm sure he made the first move to get back in touch. I'd heard he even proposed to her after she was already married to Roger." Unfortunately for Elvis, Ann-Margret was not going to be persuaded back to him. Billy mentioned that in Ann-Margret's autobiography, My Story, she mentions this incident, but glosses over some of the specifics. He said that Ann-Margret simply says that Elvis went backstage, got down on one knee, and told her he still felt the same way he always had. Despite being apart for nearly a year, Ann-Margret claimed in her memoirs that Elvis confessed his love to her. For the first time in a very long time, he and she were alone in her dressing room. According to Ann-Margret, Elvis's smile faded with time. She continued, describing how his eyes lost their playfulness and turned serious. Elvis then stepped forward and dropped to one knee. Ann-Margret realized at that moment that she would have to hurt Elvis again. Elvis reached over and held her hand, telling her exactly how he still felt about her. The actress wasn't taken aback by the heartfelt revelation. She revealed that she intuitively knew that he still had feelings for her, even after they broke up. Even though Ann-Margret never mentioned a proposal in her autobiography, the fact that he got down on one knee says a lot. Elvis saw her program and gave her a guitar-shaped arrangement of flowers every time she had a gig. Marty Lacker, another member of the Memphis Mafia, notoriously felt that Elvis would have been happier with Ann-Margret than with Priscilla. Lacker stated that he can't think of a single bad memory he had of Ann. The only time Elvis was away from her was when they'd returned to Memphis. The letters she sent him were always signed by Bunny or Thumper, and when she called Graceland, she always used the same code. He then concluded on a somber note by saying that if Elvis had ended up with Thumper, then maybe the whole story would have ended differently. How different do you think things would have been had Elvis ended up marrying Ann-Margret? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.